Welcome to the Success Journey Show. Let's travel together through the lives of individuals on their road to success.
Hey, what's going on, travelers? This is Ricky Ventures and Marlon Madden, and we're back with you for another episode of the Success Journey Show. What's going on, Marlon? How you doing today, bro?
I'm doing well. A little bit tired. Usually I don't feel it this much, but today I was like, man, I was kind of tired. Maybe I'm getting old, but I just know that I've been running this whole weekend. I've been running on minimal sleep all around the place.
And that was 2 weekends in a row, too, man.
That was 2 weekends in a row. Yeah, two weekends in a row. Ricky, how you doing before we tell them about last weekend?
I'm tired too, man. I actually fell asleep before the show today, and got a quick nap in before we got in. So it's but when you wake up and you're like you still got that
foggy,
that fogginess. Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. So yeah, still pushing through, but I'm good. I'm good overall, man.
Yeah, man. So we went to Utah to do our presentation. It was faith and finance. And we did not come to it at the aspect of I have a house on many hills that this typical faith and finance speech you would hear. It's on both of our Facebook. If you want to go back on our Facebook, our personal Facebook, Marlon Madden or Ricky Venters, and you could actually go and listen to our presentation. It was we had a lot of people come out. Utah's a beautiful city.
Yeah.
Very beautiful city. Something that Ricky and I are looking at. Probably something's going to work out from there. And we'll see what comes about that. But it was a great time. And Ricky and I just noticed now, not noticed, but we're really like, hey, we're going to expand and do a little bit more speaking gigs. Coming up in the new year, we're going to do a little bit more speaking gigs it's time for us just to share a story,
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure. It was fun. Getting out. That's my first time in Utah. Trying to think if I've been there before, and I never been there before. And then we spent a lot of time in Denver too,
Yeah. A lot of time in Denver.
Oh my goodness. But it was great, a lot is going on. We're ending the year up, really looking at some things that we're going to be shaping up for the new year. Hit Doctor is going to be on the road over the next 2 months.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. We'll be in Kentucky, and then we'll be.
What's the date for Kentucky? So if they want to come check us out.
Yeah, we'll be at what's the name of the conference? The National Softball Conference in Kentucky in December, the first week of December. I want to say the first Thursday and Friday in December. So the actual dates. Yeah, the 7th and 8th of December will be in Kentucky, and then we'll be getting down to Texas, Dallas, Texas, for the baseball conference in the first week of January. So, yeah, man, it's going to be exciting. Any softball people, baseball people, come on out. We got something new we're going to be showing as well while we're there, showcasing on top of our new elite swing trainer. So yeah, been putting a lot of work in. So, but man, I'm really excited about this podcast today. It's good.
It's looking at it from a different lens.
So
Stop
good,
looking at
man.
and as one dimensional. It's great.
It's so good, man. So you guys really get ready to kick back, get ready to enjoy this one, because you're really going to walk away with some great nuggets, man. So yeah, Marlon, let's rock, man. Let's get them into this next session, and
with Jamie. I'm just gonna leave it at Jamie.
Jamie.
They don't know who Jamie, right?
Yeah. Jamie.
They don't know if it's Jamie Foxx. They don't know if it's it's just you're gonna have to tune in.
Yeah. So this has been great, man. And let's get this rolling. We'll see you guys on the other side of this. And for all those on Facebook, man, sorry we don't got a much longer conversation with you guys tonight, but you guys can catch us next week as we in the green room. Man, love y'all, all of our travelers, and we do this for you. Let's end this year strong, and let's jump into this next guest. Peace.
One love.
Hey guys, I'm out here hitting with the Elite Swing Trainer in the cage. Really cool little tool here to help you keep your hands inside the ball and not cast away the barrel. It's got 4 different slots. The one out here is obviously the easiest one. It's more of a warm-up concept or for younger guys, and then as you go further in, it gets tougher and tougher. Really helps you keep your hands inside the ball and see how your swing is. When you hit it well and you keep your hands inside the ball, you're not gonna get any movement from the red training aid right there. You're gonna see a good result and backspin it towards the back of the cage. So there's a lot of different drills you can do with this, and this is a really simple one. You just set the tee up on a bucket, get it whatever height you need, and then you can just work knob to the ball. This is one of my personal favorite drills. You set the indicator up behind the ball, and it's to help you make sure you're not dropping your hands and helps you keep your bat on plane. If you're a guy who's really trying to work on the small things in your swing and feel your hand path and work on bat path, I definitely recommend the Elite Swing Trainer.
Hey, what's going on, travelers? We are back here for the our favorite segment of the show, and it's funny because we do these things. So you would think that someone will keep a poker face, but I started the intro off wrong, and my co-host here had his eyes wide open, like, man, go with the flow. So I had to stop and start all over, man. They would have never known we made a mistake, right? But anyways, man, so glad to be here for this our favorite segment of the show. And today we have none other than Jamie Elder. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us on the Success Journey show. How's it going, man?
Man, it's good. Thank you for having me. I know it's late night and everybody got a lot of things to do. So the fact that you blessed me with your time, I really appreciate it.
Man, we appreciate you, man. Appreciate you. And thanks for referencing the night, man. We like doing that so that people ask us, man, how do you guys always get all this stuff done? They want us to hear that we're doing it on work time. We're like, nah, we up at night doing this thing. So thanks for the confirmation there. We didn't cue them in on that, guys. But anyways, Jamie, man, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to all of our listeners and travelers around the world?
Oh, yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And if you do hear like background noise, it's like I live in Chicago off State Street. So we do have police and real life happening outside. So if you do hear that, I was like, I'll keep it real. Main thing, name's Jamie the Elder, originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So born and raised there. Wasn't a good high school kid, ended up in the military. My father gave me 4 options, like a lot of us come out the hood. Either go to college, get a career, go to military, go to jail. And, I was somebody on their way to jail. So I ended up choosing the military as an option when it was presented to me. So after serving 2 years in active duty, my father passed away after my first year. So I took my inheritance and then I came back to Milwaukee around the age of 21, started my first company. So I had the first 1-800 Got Jumped franchise in Wisconsin. Ran that for a couple of years. Then my first real startup, Landlord Concierge, was a real estate services business for small to medium-sized landlord. Ran that till about 2008 when the market crashed. So we went to the Great Recession. And so, of course, I had to let that go, got back into the workforce. And I was kind of like the director of sales and management for a marketing firm in Wisconsin. I was there for about 4 years almost. And then I was getting ready to move to Charlotte, North Carolina, because at that time, there was coming out the Great Recession. I lost 2 banks. And they were just kind of like, how do we, reimagine ourselves? They were really being open to entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs of color. But by, chance or just by, God's blessings, like I met my good friend Reggie Newsom. I had just got appointed to be in Governor Walker's administration as a secretary for workforce development. And he was, being anything about Wisconsin, he was running the 250,000 jobs pledge. I saw him in a Bucks game one day and, he was tired, stressed out. And I just said, hey, man, I ain't here to bother you and beg for money. I just got some ideas about how to help the hood. I know, a lot of people don't want to deal with you in Milwaukee because you represent a Republican administration. But last time I checked, y'all in power. So I just want to be able to, plug in, tap in, and be able to, help the people. So we ended up getting a meeting in the governor's conference room in Milwaukee. I had a conversation. He was just like, yo, I like your ideas. Just give me a white paper to summarize it, and we'll go from there. 6 months later, I got appointed to be the director, officer of development for Department of Children and Families.
Wow.
I was only 29 years old, had no clue what I was doing. I didn't have no kids, no wife, still neither one. So I'm like, well, I'm in this, child care agency. Put me in something like workforce development, economic development. But that was a blessing. So I did, over 4.5 years of that. I can go more into that about what I actually focus on. Other than, so this is like my journey where I started living in 5 cities in 5 years. So I tell people I moved twice for the money and twice for honey. And so, and so the first move from Milwaukee to DC is definitely a money move. So, one day I was reading like NBCnews.com or something like that. Read this article about this billionaire Charles Koch from Kansas. He's trying to start his own venture philanthropy and he want to help the hood do all this community investment. And I kind of thought that was a joke, right? Like, what does he do from Kansas know about, Milwaukee or Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, and other places, I was really plugged into. And so I blind applied trying to interview them as they're interviewing me, and they hired me on the spot. And so I called my girl at the time, just like, yo, they got hired. If you cool, I'll come out to DC. She's like, yeah, it's part of the dream, man. So like, I came to DC, worked 2.5 years. I Stand Together Foundation. So I had the entire Midwest, San Diego, Dallas, and New Jersey as part of my portfolio. We were just basically doing venture philanthropy into communities of color across the country. I was kind of being there. Same thing, doing venture capital for startups and entrepreneurs. I was doing for scalable nonprofits and social enterprises. And that included groups like, back then, before, he big time now, but even then I had Deion Sanders' $21 million donor advised fund I managed. Back when people didn't get the dream, back when people didn't understand what he's trying to do. Now after, like I said, 200,000 miles a year, getting burned out, I made another move to Baltimore. That was a honey move. So my ex, she was a physician, so she's going to work at Johns Hopkins. And so we moved to Baltimore together. And then we was there for like a year. And then after that, transitioned over to Fort Wayne because she had a great job there. Again, got to follow your honey. So follow her to Fort Wayne, Indiana. Never thought I'd end up there. But I ended up working for a private equity firm as their director of urban development. And I was developing their whole strategy. There's not a lot of urban in Fort Wayne, Indiana, so I was doing what I can. But using their model of private equity, how do you apply it to the hood? And so out of that, thing, basically COVID hit, and then of course in 2020. And so at that time, he thought he was going out of business. So he laid off like 2/3 of the staff, had a generous severance. And at that point in time, I just prayed and said, if I could go anywhere in the world, where would I go? What would I do? And I landed in Chicago. So I was like a money move. And so that's where I started my own private equity firm with a couple of partners, Isaac McCoy, John McGill, called I2J Group. We raised like, 6 figures overnight. And 6 months later, about a year later, we made our first acquisition of a kitchen and bath remodeling company in Dallas, Texas. So since that point in time, come out of COVID, everything else like that, I've joined a couple organizations, but the one I'm at now is called Revolution Institute. I serve as the director of business and workforce development. So we're kind of trying to make an acquisition in the south side or west side of a manufacturing production company. And we want to convert it to a worker cooperative. So we ain't trying to approach workforce development through a labor lens. We're trying to approach it through an ownership lens. So we want to create worker owners. So people live in those communities actually own their jobs. And then outside of that, as like when I met Marlon back in DC or whatever, I'm also working on a tri-state regional economic development through Alliance Regional Development. So it's the first of its kind tri-state economic development organization that covers Southeast Wisconsin, so Madison and Milwaukee for people who may or may not know the landscape, Northeast Illinois, which is basically Chicago, and then around the bottom of Lake Michigan, Northwest Indiana. So you pretty much go like Gary all the way to like, South Bend, kind of our region. So the same way you had a DMV, you have the, Metroplex in Dallas, you got the Research Triangle, like we trying to create our own regional corridor. So like that, plus, to try and diversify our companies and other things, that's what keep me busy most of the time.
Man.
Woo, man, we have a lot to talk about. Man, there's so many things that you said and so many synergies in the spaces that you had, and so many things I'm just curious about, man, as you've gone through your journey and as you're journeying, man. So, man, kudos to you for all the things that you have achieved thus far. But before we get into the deep of it, you mentioned that your pops gave you the choices, man. He said, "Hey, this is how you've been performing." And this is the results of your performance right here.
Yeah, basically.
These are the roads of your options. Bring us back to that, Jamie, there. What was your mindset, walking into, even boot camp, at that time, as you were transitioning to that space?
That's a good question. I literally had this lunch with our board chair on Monday. He's a older white Jewish fellow. He just kind of had this same. We were talking about how we be better at what we're doing, taking more of a cultural lens. When we try to help people, right? So a lot of people have this Superman savior complex. And always like, man, how do we help the hood? But like, we don't know how to meet people where they at. And it's always remind people like, they think who I am today, that's who I always was. Like, man, like, how'd you know about you like this Carlton Banks dude? How you know about the hood? I'm like, man, he's like, yo, like 20 years ago, I was affiliated with the Gangster Disciples, man. It's like, it's a journey, it's a pathway to get here. And so for me, it's like, again, rewind back to high school was kind of like, like a lot, back then. And for me, high school it was simple. It was before like social media. It's like, it's like Facebook. Like that's where you play basketball and get girls. So I had a perfect attendance. So my attendance records was impeccable. Like, I'm going to school every day. But like, I was going to school for the wrong reasons though. I really wasn't applying myself. So I was smart. But the thing is, going to public school that was really focused on college, like I didn't know what entrepreneurship was. Like junior achievement, all those types of programs, all these programs they got today, that wasn't in my school back then. Like they had this very linear track was, if you black in inner city, you go to school, you get good grades, you get a good job, and then you use that as economic mobility to like get out the hood. And then if you don't go to college, it's like, well, you're gonna be on somebody's factory line or you're gonna be like a civil servant. Like it wasn't that too many options, but I'm like, I'm something else. I'm none of those, but I don't know what I am. So that plus just like trying to transition as a young man, you just try to, if you have a father, you start, it's like lions, right? You start competing with them for who's going to be the king of the household, and they will soon tell you who they are, who's the king of the household. And then, keep in mind back then in Milwaukee, still a very violent city, but even then we come out of this industrial decline, the crack epidemic taking hold. And so I had two older sisters. I never had brothers. So who became my brothers? The people I'm going to school with. My people I'm going to school with, they didn't always have the structure I had in my household. And so, so that's how I got affiliated with the Gangster Disciples. And so getting caught up in that life to where, I always call like my ghetto Walmart, right? People say like, well, if I'm in a business setting, my first company is when I got junk. If I'm in a real setting, like it's like my ghetto Walmart. So I was the first kid on my block to have a computer. So back when eBay and all that stuff first came out, I used to buy like fake Rolexes and Movados.
Oh wow!
And wear them to school. Trying to be fly. We're like my little, my little Kmart shirt and all that polo, FUBU shirt and all. Yeah. So, but then back then, people will look like you. They're like, yo, can you give me a watch too? So I don't know anything about profit margin stuff like that. So I'm like, I'm gonna buy it for $15. I'm giving sell them for $25. Like I'm not counting shipping and all that. So I wouldn't get rich. I would just sell it for more than I bought it. And so first I would help out just selling jewelry, just innocent stuff, right? People sell candies, people sold burnt CDs, the new Tupac, the new Jay-Z. That's what we did back then. And then after that, though, one of my guys closed it. I ain't gonna say no names, I don't know the statute of limitations say, but he's still my homie though. He worked at a local department store. He realized, man, if you don't restock the clothes, like they don't know, so you could, just take them. And so we started with the jewelry department, then we expanded into clothing. And so after that, you enterprise a young man, like we really, back then they used to put key boxes on all the cars. That was an easy way for the dealers to like really, get the keys to a test drive. So if you took a flathead screwdriver, you could put the back of the box open, have keys to a brand new car. So now we had an auto department. So
there you go, enterprising.
Yeah. but you know, back then, if you know, so again, you 15, 16, 17 years old, you driving around and brand new Lincoln, you got Navigator, you got a Stratus, you got an Impala, you wearing
Stratus. Oh man, I remember that.
You go back.
The Dodge Stratus.
You got Sebrings, you know, you driving all that back then.
Yeah.
And then you got 2 watches on. They fake, but they watches. And you got brand new clothes every day. You start getting attention from real bad people. Like we fake bad, we Playboy bad. These real bad people out there. So they say, "Hey man, I want a watch. I want some clothes. You know, I want some Nautica. I want some FUBU. I want some, you know, whatever. I want that car." So then you start selling to them because they good, consistent clientele. But you start dealing with drug dealers. They don't always pay you in cash. They pay you what they have. So now we in pharmaceuticals.
Oh man.
So like you see how it escalate real quick from just like I want to be cool, I want to sell stuff to like I'm in the game. And at that time, it's like this is something I always talk about now. We had even to this day, Black people, even Black professionals, have an aspiration gap to our white counterparts.
Yeah.
I could meet Harvard educated Black men who still have an aspirational gap with like a white man with like a tech degree. And so like come out of a 2-year college. And so for us, and our aspiration gap wasn't even about profession. It was about we were living in a moment. The idea of having a future didn't exist to us. Like when somebody be like, what do you want to be at 21? Like, I'm not gonna live to see 21. Like talking about like people around here who like we either gonna be dead or in jail. So like, why should I plan on college and education? Why should I do all these things you tell me to do if I'm not gonna be here? So not my mindset, my mentality was I was like living in the moment. And so what happened for me, what got me at that environment is my spiritual mentor, Bishop Omar Jawar, RIP to him. He's the one connecting me to Deion Sanders. He was the one saying like urban culture moves at the speed of light. It moves faster in technology. It moves at the speed of light. And so what you want to do, especially for Black men, is create a pause. And in that pause, we can think and we can make rational decisions, rational choices. And so what allowed me to escape was like I had to pause when Sergeant Moore from the United States Army, I thought he was the cops calling my house based on what I was doing. And then he turned out to be a recruiter. And I said, yeah, sure, you come over and talk to me and my father. That gave me a pause. He forced me to think about the future in ways I hadn't thought about in 3 years. And so when I took the opportunity to take advantage of going to the United States Army, my grades instantly improved. I stopped connecting with the people I was connected with. I got a girlfriend who's a nerd, so she nerded me up. And then, by the time when I graduated high school, literally I graduated in June. I got shipped off in August. And I learned at my mother's funeral within 6 months, most of my friends got locked up on drug charges. So I was that close for being statistic. And so that was like my psychology back then. I tell people like, man, you talk to these young men and young women, they live in the moment. And so a lot of stuff we're talking about, and we try to tell them about 2 year, 4 years, 6 year. Like my ex, she spent 10 years in school to be a physician.
Yeah.
They can't buy into that.
No.
Yeah. Man, it's funny. I had to first of all, when you said Dodge Stratus, let me tell you something. I remember when I watched Belly and he went to Omaha, Nebraska.
Yep.
He had the Intrepid when he drove off and he crashed. What was it? I think it was Redman or whoever crashed when they drugged him or whatever. I think it was Redman.
Yeah.
And back then I was like, yo, what kind of car is that? An Intrepid, brother.
Intrepid.
The Intrepid was the car. We're like, yo, the Intrepid is Dodge Stratus. We're like, wow, what's that all about?
No, we had one of those in Fleet too.
In the fleet. Yo,
Fleet is a fleet.
Fleet management. He was doing fleet management and everything.
Now we reckless. We took 8 cars in one night just because we could.
And these kids are probably, somebody's listening to this and like, you got to remember there was no low jack on no cars. There was no ways to trace a car. There was no GPS. A car got you had to be an upscale dealership to actually have a camera at your spot.
He did.
It wasn't like it was today. You do something and nobody knew who you were. Nobody knew, only if you kind of kept the car and somebody could point it out, or they'd have to check a VIN number or whatever it was.
Yeah. Like you had to buy the car, then turn on OnStar. Like it just wasn't part of it.
Yeah.
And then we got pulled over, right? Like cops just run the plate and they'll see like this is a Honda Civic with a Navigator car. Like this ain't matching. And again, we young, they overworked, so it's like, okay, where you get the car from? We bought it from a crackhead. Okay, well, give me the keys. I'm gonna return it. It's no harm, no foul. That's all we did.
Yeah. So, what did going in the military and traveling to different and seeing people in different spaces? How did that shape your mind from going to now from Milwaukee? And people's like, Milwaukee. Trust me, I know.
Yeah.
I met a couple brothers in the Marine Corps that were from Milwaukee, and I said the same thing. And then they started telling me their stories. I was like, Milwaukee's like that?
Man, Milwaukee. No, I hear. Yeah, number one, that's the first thing. So, for me, it's crazy. So Milwaukee's a minority majority city. And it's the most segregated city in the country. So Chicago always talks about like, no, they're the most segregated. I'm like, y'all have diverse suburbs. Like our suburbs have like 2-3% people of color in all. If you add up Asians and Latinos, that's how you get to the diversity in suburbs. And so for me, I'm always around Black and brown people. Like I knew more Hmong people. I grew up, I never knew a Jewish person. If they were, I didn't know. And so what happened was I went to the military. Number one, I go to boot camp and I meet all these brothers from like Miami, like they come to these, New Orleans, got these crazy accents, and like LA, like I'm at Fort Jackson, and he's like, man, you from Milwaukee? Like I didn't know Black people lived in Wisconsin. I'm like, what? And I'm like, and I didn't know like your type of Black people lived in Florida. Like, I'm thinking about Florida. I'm thinking about like Disney World, and you like country. So like, I don't get it. Like, and so, but the thing was, I remember I worked for the Fort Gordon Command Group. So I worked for the Chief of Staff, Colonel Foley, in his office. And on our floor, we had like the Israeli liaison. I remember like talking to him, stuff like that. And one of the things for me is like, I remember telling him about Israel and all that type of, things about the country. And I'm like, Israel. It's like, what was it about? It's like, it was like this, the promised land. It's like living it's all, the population is primarily Jewish. I'm like, Jewish. I'm like, man, I thought all y'all went extinct in the World War II. like y'all got a whole country. Like this is, y'all are like, this is totally foreign to me coming from where I'm coming from. So seeing the diversity of people, like I said, to your point, traveling, like working at a higher level, working at the Fort Gordon Command Group at the time. If my father hadn't passed away, I already got accepted in Texas A&M. So I was going to join the Green and Gold program. So it changed my life. It let me know that the world was bigger than the north side of Milwaukee. So when I went back to Milwaukee after my father passed, I'm like, man, the world is huge. I mean, at least the country's big. And there's a place in it for it. So that's what gave me the courage to then buy a company. So my company was based in Vancouver. So I wasn't intimidated to like take my money, invest, tens of thousands to a company that's based in Vancouver. It's like, get a passport. I'm like, all right, get a passport. Then you got to go travel to like Vancouver. Like, all right, never been there, but it's about money. I'm about to go do it. Yeah. Had I not left Milwaukee, I would have, I tell my nephews all the time, man, just like this is time in your life between like, 15 to 20. I ain't trying to put too much pressure on you, but I know there's a lot of guys who, even when they left the hood, they never left the hood mentality, never left those relationships. So now what they doing? They 35 years old at hookah bars, drinking vodka, talking about how things could have been.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
But when you went back, right, and it was unfortunate your father passed away, and you went back and you had to make that decision to start a company. But going back to your old stomping grounds, like what was that like now with your mindset? Like I know you did mention that most of the people that you were around, they were either locked up or whatever, but still, was there ever a temptation of that draw to like kind of get sucked back into that lifestyle that you had kind of moved away from?
Yeah, 1,000%. It's still there, right? So one of the things is that it's like I'm never going back. I mean, my senior year of high school, I'm like, I knew I'm never going to do like criminal activity again. Like, I ain't built for that. Like, even when I was doing it, like, I'm doing it for girls. Man, girls like bad boys. They can say whatever. They attracted to bad dudes. So I'm trying to be cool, but I ain't trying to like go to prison, tap my face up, shoot somebody. That's not me. It's like, you know, I'm smooth, but I'm slick. But and so, but going back in that environment though, right? What happens? I'm pretty sure you faced this going back around your family.
Yeah.
Before it got legalized, like everybody's smoking weed. People want to binge drink. People want to go to clubs where I'm getting patted down. So somebody gonna act stupid and then they start shooting. So I lose it all because I just happen to be in an environment in which harm can come to me. I have nothing to do with the harm.
Yeah.
Like I go outside, somebody busted in my car, somebody broke in my car, somebody stole my car. Or I might have some friends who like they having beef and they call me as like, yo, I need you to help me out in this situation. So now I'm taking on beef and getting into confrontations that have nothing to do with me. And so when I first got back, you know, I was still in that mindset of like, I got to be loyal to my friends. Like, and to me, I conflated, and again, we still do this. I conflated toxic urban culture with being Black. And it took me a long time, literally till I was in my 30s, to realize being, again, not urban culture is great. Toxic urban culture is dangerous. It's terrible, right? And that's something I'm like always trying to find that middle ground. How do I preach against it without coming off like I'm demonizing Black people, right? I'm a sellout and this and that other. So I'm trying to square up and not be a sellout. So I'm coming to the club, all my guys some in baggy jeans sagging, getting tats on their neck. I still got tats on my arms and my back, but I'm wearing khakis. And so then like I just love work, right? You know, I'm wearing, you know, I'm thinking like girls be feeling me because I got a 100 got junk polo on and my khakis. I'm like, I own this company though.
Yeah.
So like you want me to put on a Bulls jersey? I don't play for the Bulls.
Yeah.
But I play for the company I own. And they couldn't make that connection, especially like young women cannot make that connection. And so like they look at me as like, man, you funny, but you ain't got no swag. And I'm starting to feel resentful. Like it's crazy. Like I'm a business owner and y'all treat me like this way. And even like, you know, again, I thought like if I bought a company, all this stuff, like I would like the Black community as a whole, like I would go to the church and churches be raised and take a collection to help support my business and hand out flyers and all that. That's not what happened. No. It was crazy. It was actually, and I said this, I'm actually working on white paper now with a group where it was wealthy white men who became my biggest advocates. And we go more into that, but like it was honestly,
we are.
Yeah.
So that's what happened where, hey, like I went back there, I tried to have this balance, but ultimately it was kind of like I had to embrace what it was, which was a young Black professional, and I had to start associating with other young Black professionals, and that was outside the environments I was born and raised.
Yeah. So travelers, real quick pause. So we just spent the first half of this really just giving a backdrop, a mindset. We already saw the whole picture of where he started, where Jamie started, and where he is now. But we went into some more detail about the story, and it's really getting to understand of the mind and the environment and the things and the motives that cultivated Jamie's early life and start setting him up on the path in which he's set on and the trajectory that he's on today. So now as we kind of switch gears and go a little bit deeper into the story as to how you started transitioning into the business world. Right. I can tell you right now, just listening to your mindset from young, like you already had that business acumen, right? And it was just about kind of pairing that up with the actual business world and really taking off. Of course, there's learning along the way, right? But as you started with that first company, let's start there. You know, what was it like? You gave it a little hint, you know, going in and start trying to raise money in different places. You thought everyone that looked like you was going to be like, oh man, I'm so proud of you. Here's a dollar or whatever. You struggling to get 50 cents from them, you know, and talk about that journey of starting your own business and then how that started growing from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, the seed was planted for me in the Army, right? So it's like, you know, kind of like my father gave me the sport choices. Even when I was in the Army, I realized I was a 74 Bravo. So I was an Information Systems Operation-Analyst, which kind of translated to computer help desk. And I hated it. I was like, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. And I didn't want to do what my father did, which worked 40 years at a factory. And so I'm just like, at some point I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which changed my psychology, right? I was like, a lot of people might think it's a scam, this, that, and other. I'm like, at the point in my time in my life, like it hit me. Like I didn't know that this psychology behind capitalism and business and ownership versus labor and stuff like that. And so that triggered me to then start just read all kind of magazines, business magazines, investment magazines. And one of them was like, hey, 80% of multimillionaires attribute their wealth to business ownership or investment. I'm like, all right, I'm about to start investing money. So I like taught myself the stock market when I was in the Army. But then, it's just like, it wasn't like the movie Wall Street. It was like, I bought some stock goes up, stock goes down, stock goes up. I'm like, okay, man, I thought about to be out here, buying,
killing it.
I thought about to get like 1 million shares of Disney and get a Ferrari. Like this does take too long, man. Like, I need something faster than the stock. And so that's when I looked at like how do I start a business, buy a business. It was a long process. I was like a lot of people. I started with network marketing companies. I was selling vitamins and all that. Like I'll be in the Army all day. That was 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
5 o'clock. I got me a little list I bought for $50. I'm calling people on like South Dakota, like going to buy some vitamins.
Yeah.
And that taught me how to do sales, but like that's what you got to do. But eventually, when my father passed away, I had this, that since served as a liquidity event for me. I've realized that like I didn't want to go to business school. And I didn't want to do a startup. So a franchise was the best route for me. So that's why I ended up buying a franchise, because they would give me the support and guidance. Yes, and I thought like worst case scenario, it would be the equivalent of buying a Marquette University education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so then that was kind of put me on the trajectory. And it was people at the franchise who was saying like, hey, if you want to network and sell, you got to go join the Chamber of Commerce. Like I didn't know what Chamber of Commerce was. Like I just go in there, I've got like a blue shirt on. I'm like, I can still remember this. We literally in the lobby of like this fancy hotel. Everybody wearing business suits, and people from like Harley Davidson and Miller, like all these Fortune 500s. And I brought like 20 presentation folders. I'm like handing it to them. So they like try to put their wine and cheese down and got folders on it. It's like nice women with folders under their arm. I'm like, because nobody taught me how to network. I'm like, hey, my friends, this is all my information. Here you go. People are like, no, you just got to throw a card at them, man. You don't need to bring the whole deck.
You thought you were going to get an acting job. Here's my headshot.
I brought the whole portfolio to like the wine and cheese reception. I didn't know, but it was actually like, now I look back at like today is funny, but it actually worked out, because that's when ignorance is bliss. Because had I known what a chamber was, I would have been like a lot of other Black people saying like, man, they don't want us down there. Like they racist, they this, they that. And that's how like I said, white people became, at least white males became one of my biggest advocates, because they saw me doing it incorrectly, but they had this weird curiosity. It's kind of like, all right, it's kind of like that movie, what was that? Trading Places. Yeah. Like Eddie Murphy, that's what they started doing to me. Like if I could teach this monkey how to read, let's see what happens. And so I think it started there, but then they realized like, yo, I ain't a monkey. This dude really educated, intellectual. So like he actually has immense value. So I was changing them as much as he is trying to change me. So it became a mutually beneficial relationship.
Well, man, I want to stay. There's so many places I want to go right now because of where you are now and back then. I'm going to jump a little bit. What had you, being that you're working with all these different companies, venture capitalists, all these, and you have all the accolades of trying to help these inner cities into blossoming, what do you think is holding back that trajectory?
Yeah. So one of the things I always talk about, like I remember like my ex, she always talk about like, man, you don't, okay, I know your position on nonprofits, you don't work at a community nonprofit because you don't like perpetual fundraising. But you also don't work for a business because I see your paychecks. So what do you do? And so for me, it was about, I had to define it. I said, I'm a translator between the corporate suites and city streets. So I work at the intersection of capitalism and communities, because what I've seen wrong in society, as it talks about economic mobility for Black and brown people across the country, is that it's kind of like how I look at NBA, right? NFL. I remember I was thinking about this. I work with Deion Sanders. I'm like, okay, we take high schoolers, right? And Nick Saban or Rick Pitino or Calipari, like all these coaches, they could teach them the most complex playbooks. So it's not that we don't have the acumen. It's not that we don't have the aptitude. It's just like Kentucky, Alabama, Dallas Cowboys, Golden State Warriors, Steve Kerr. They've all figured out how to take these complex things and translate it through a cultural lens. And so I've been trying to do the same thing with capitalism. And so when I got to places like, I remember, so I worked at Stand Together. That's basically the foundation affiliated with Coke. So Coke Industries and their broader network. And so I remember I was talking to people like Charles Koch, and I'm like, he come off like straight up oil, even today, like in his 80s, like a straight up oil man. Act like he don't know what he's doing. Like he's really smart, just an engineering smart. He don't have street smarts, but he has really high intellect and engineering scientific smarts. And that's what allowed him to get what he got. But when he talks about like market-based management and his MBM philosophies, he's just like, I run my company. It's like you run a football team. You can have 5 offensive linemen on the line. That don't mean you all get paid the same. Like your left tackle gonna be nationally more valuable than your right guard because your left tackle has a higher sense of responsibilities. So there's possible people in my company, based on their responsibilities, based on their experience, based on their performance, they can get paid more than their bosses. And so stuff like that, I think would translate better to communities of color versus just simply saying, here's a hierarchical approach. Here's the pyramid. Here's what the MBAs, here's what University of Chicago Booth or, Duke will say or Harvard would say. So that's been one of the things I think has been setting us back is because it sounds so intimidating because we haven't actually had it communicated in a playbook we could properly digest like we do other complex things.
I like that answer. It wasn't the answer I thought I was gonna get, but I love the answer because we have the business acumen. I always tell people like your drug dealer is a daggone genius.
Yeah.
A successful one, I should say. They're a genius because of what they have to do. They have to keep the best product on the market. They have to find the workers and have these guys bought into their idea that I know I'm getting the lion's share, but I'm going to take care of you. I need you to stay on the block even when it's cold and put your life in danger to go to jail in order for us to get the advancements. We have to know how to move our product around, and we have to know what the opposition is doing, which is the cops, right? In order for us to be successful. Exactly. So they're doing all this research while they're trying to run an enterprise. And those guys, as you see the Jay-Z's, the 50 Cents, these guys that gone on, you're seeing that they are actually just applying that model to what they're doing and diversifying themselves at the same time.
Yeah.
So we have the business acumen, but we just got to, like you said, we got to marry that up with something that we can associate with or something, not just have somebody come and tell you, hey, go to Duke and they'll teach you business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and to that point, so there is so a lot of people starting to say like, man, why need to talk about like the oppressive white man in that answer? I'm like, it's like for me, it's like there's kind of like a 10-foot rim, like they're an obstacle to be dunked on. Not they're not the barrier. Like to them, the rim being 10 feet is not the obstacle. Me jumping 10 feet is the obstacle. Yeah. And so, but in regards to that though, I think the issue I have with like the funders or the people currently in power, like or the white majority is that when they say like we want to do DEI, right? The reality is like I'm a very transparent person. Like they can't tell black people apart.
No.
And so And so because they can't tell black people apart, they want to fund us at our lowest common denominator. So they look at us as a community of you're just a collection of laborers, consumers, and voters. They don't see us as leaders because they see 1998, 400 degrees juvenile Jamie. They don't realize I grew up and matured. You're trying to fund me back then, and they overlook me today. So to your point you just made, right? It's just like the irony is this. Like when I try to raise funding, it's the thing I want to like call out the most. Like I wish I just could go on CNN and rant for 12 hours. Stop giving us grant applications where you want us to tell sad black stories.
Yeah, yeah.
You are not.
Yeah.
You are not. No, there's no VC. There is no angel investor. There's no grant body in the world that's telling white kids, man, tell us about how meth hit your family. Man, tell us about that school shooting.
Yeah.
Please tell us about how alcohol impacted your family, created barriers for you. Please tell us about how it was to live in Appalachia. Like they want us to tell stories and not the substance of our talents. And so what ends up happening, it comes this vicious cycle to where the largest amount of resources are going to the people who can least do anything with them at this present time.
Yeah.
And so the people who you could be taken from the upper middle class into the upper class, the middle class into the upper middle class, and so on and so forth, we're getting overlooked because it's just like
our story is not strong enough.
Yeah, like you black, but you ain't the type of black I'm looking for. Like I'm looking for boys in the hood black.
Yeah,
you more like Cosby black. And I'm looking so technically you don't have problems because you don't have problems like that dude who just got out of prison problems. You don't have baby daddy problems. You don't have struggle problems. And I'm just like, yo, when you say that, like again, you're creating this entire monolith about what Black America is. And I think so when we talk about diversity, you gotta recognize there's diversity amongst the races. There are diversity amongst the ethnic groups. And so I'll share a story on this because this blew my mind. I was just at the Atlanta University Center, right? And I'm like, again, I didn't go straight to college. And so I didn't know what the AUC was. Like, it's a big thing in Atlanta, being up north. I'm like, AUC, I never heard of this. Like, I heard of Morehouse and Spelman, and Clark. Yeah. I didn't know they were all put together. I thought they were like across the city or something, right? And so I'm down there, and and again, I might get, I don't know, maybe a guy called me out for this, but I feel like it's wrong. I'm down there at the Clark Business School, and they just let me know, like, yeah, last summer we just had this our business school renamed. And it's renamed after a white family. And I'm like, all right, how much does it cost? He was like, $3 million. I said, okay, in Chicago, like again, my ex, she went to Northwestern. Like I'm only like 30 minutes from Evanston.
Yeah.
I'm like, in one capital campaign, they raised $6 billion in like 18 months. Just by shaking the coffee can, like, hey, whoever got money, we need it. And they raised $6 billion. It wasn't even intentional. Clark Atlanta, one of the most prestigious HBCUs in the country, sold the name of the business school for the price of a mansion. Right? Not even like a modern, Tyler Perry mansion. Like something you get in the DMV type of, off in the Colorado or something type of mansion. Damn. And so I asked him, I was like, I'm frustrated. I'm talking to my guy down there. I'm like, yo, what happened? Like, how is it possible? Our business, the name of our school. I'm saying I went to Penn State, but I was like, this is our school. How did this happen? And he said, man, you know what the AUC does? We are second to none in producing talent for Fortune 50 corporations. Like our average graduate will earn like $80,000 as soon as they cross the stage. You know what we do terrible at? We are terrible at producing entrepreneurs and innovators. It is the people who go on to start companies who come back and die. We don't have alums who can write a $3 million check and not fill it. What we have is a bunch of people earning 5 figures, 6 figures. All their money's in retirement savings. They don't have equity in the company. They don't have equity in Coca-Cola. They don't have equity in United Airlines. They didn't start the next Google. They didn't start the next Facebook. So when Harvard and Stanford, what do? They call their alums who started all these. They started the Fortune 50 companies. What do we have? Again, laborers. So that's why my frustration is like, even when we do it well, we still aren't doing it well enough relative to our Black counterparts. So now we have a bunch of people in Atlanta like, I'm doing it big. I'm making $250,000 working at X Fortune 50 company. And then meanwhile, it's just like, hey, can we like use a Black brunch to like put our name on the business school? Yo, I don't got it. I got a Rolls Royce, but I don't got money to endow my own university. And that's where I said that's the problem I want to work on.
Man, dude. You just summed up so much stuff. Marlon and I, we're often talking about just the nature of what college produces,
Mhm.
right? And us trying to achieve these different opportunities in these organizations and things of that nature. And kudos to people that go out and you have a $250,000 salary. That's amazing, right?
Exactly.
It's amazing. You're part of a very small percentage of, employees in the world. But when you want to do something to the magnitude that makes a difference and it makes an impact at that level, right? You're handcuffed still.
Yes.
And you can't make the difference. And the thing, until you just said that just now, I never even thought that was the cause or that was it. But like you said, we're producing high achieving individuals from our schools, but they're high achieving laborers.
Yes.
Thank you.
They're politicians.
Yes.
They're executive workers, politicians. There are a lot of things. They're not wealthy. They're not when I say wealthy, I don't mean wealthy in the sense of like.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. I mean like wealth creators. Like I'm so rich, I can make other people rich.
Yes.
Correct.
That's what they can't do.
I just bought a daggone base and turned it into a movie studio.
Yes.
Not that kind of wealth.
Yeah, not that kind of wealth, right? Not
provided
kind of
jobs for multiple people. Yeah.
Like we don't have the wealth for like, if President Biden visits Chicago, there's two types of people. Me, I got to go buy a ticket to see him. There's some people, he goes visit them. There's a private dinner amongst their friends and family who donate to him privately. Like, yeah, we ain't going to the auditorium and scream with the pep rally. We're going to host a private dinner amongst us. and that's a difference. And the thing is, we don't have enough of those people in our community. That's something I'm trying to solve. So to your point, like even my theory of change, right? When I wanted to like start my own private equity firm, it wasn't even about putting me and my partner in a position of business ownership. It was also, we were very intentional about selecting people. Yeah, we wanted to have Black investors. So when I won, you won. So I want somebody to be like, because how many people became wealthy when Mark Zuckerberg got wealthy? Because they were initial investor in Mark Zuckerberg.
Correct.
Same thing with the people for Google and all these other companies.
Uber.
And so I'm saying like, hey, I got a new startup. I got 10 million shares. Ricky Marlin, man, if y'all got 50 grand, put it in here because I want to make sure your 50 grand turns into 500 million. Mm-hmm. And then you pass along to the next, then you start seeding the next startups. So now we can go reclaim Clark Business School. It cost them $3 million to put their name on it. We're going to give them 30 to put our name on it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dude, but talk about, and sorry if you kind of touched it again, but you mentioned something earlier about when you were trying to get money and all those things, and people that the sources where you needed to actually got money from were the white, and I don't know if you said men or not, but
yeah, it was white men.
White men were the ones that were in position to help you, go to that next step. Like talk about what that experience looked like, how that correlates to what you're trying to do right now and help building people color up.
Yeah. So I think the main thing is that like, this is the thing again, as young people, we weren't taught is that like, so my father, he went like, people don't realize is like, my grandfather was born a slave. Like he's born in January 26, 1865. My father was born January 3rd, 1921. So it's like a huge family. And I was born in 1982. And so my grandfather died, never knew how it was possible. And he only left my father $6 to his name. And so my father flipped that to a six-figure estate by just working 40 years, saving, investing, stuff like that. When my father died, he left me a lot. The thing he didn't leave me was social connections. No, I had no social capital. Like when I say the only social capital I had was like the person he knew at H&R Block. That was it. Like that was his tax prep. that was the amount. That was it. That was like, so every relationship I had, like all the way, because again, it took social. The reason I was in DC to meet Marlon is because I knew, Mark, who was the president of Alliance for Regional Development. He also sits on the board for the U.S. Capitol Historical Society, whatever else. He gave me a free ticket. that just got me in a room to then meet Marlon, which then brought me to this podcast. We're not taught that in coming to school. Like, hey, your network will reflect your net worth, and your network will reflect your network. And so one of the things that I say my white mentors and advocates have done that my black ones simply could not, they introduced me to places and people my black mentors never knew existed.
You're 100% correct, because you know what's funny? The reason why I was drawn to you, because we were probably, it was the two ladies that were with you that was black, myself, you, and they had like a couple of Hispanics in the room.
Yeah.
But everybody else was a white, and I was just like, okay, if I'm here and he's here, he must be here for a reason. Let me go find out. Let me sit and talk to him. And that's how it happened, right? Finish up what you're saying.
No. I guess the funny part is like, so Marlon even out, like, it's like the women I'm with was they two beautiful twins. So shout out to Natalie and Nicole. So the crazy part is I brought them. They had nothing to do with that. But so like Nicole and I'm pressuring her on this. So Nicole is the #1 special events person at Charlie Palmer Restaurant, which is the largest restaurant across the street from the U.S. Capitol. All the special events, all the inauguration, she does that. But she was never taught on how to capitalize on her relationships. And so one of the things me and her work on, started saying like, cool, unless you want to be up here like busting tables and setting up meetings and all this stuff for the rest of your life, like you got to find a way to cash in on the social capital you have. Because these people, because what I had to learn the hard way, I think is during the Obama administration, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. I know Beyonce, she don't know me, so she picking up my call.
You just changed me from saying that saying now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like people always says that. It's always not who you. It's like it's not. It's like who. I'm like no. It's like who knows you. I know a lot of people know me. A lot of people ain't talking to me at 8:30 at night. Like they know 9 to 5. After 5 o'clock, it's going straight to voicemail. You better text, you better DM me, and even then, I might get back to you when I get back to you. Yeah. But I know like you two are like serious about your money, so I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make time for you. So what I'm able to do with my white mentors is like this is another thing too. I had to learn the hard way. It's just like if you mean somebody from 9 to 5 during their work off hours, you're not meaning that person. You mean their representative. It's when they start saying, okay, Jamie, okay, hey, what you doing? You want to go? Hey, I got to run out. You want to go grab the happy hour drink with me? Yes. You start doing the happy hour. Hey, Jamie, you about to, what's another spot? You want to roll with me? Yes. So my 4:30 meeting, I'm now at midnight. And guess what happened? For that last 8 hours, more and more drinks, they get more and more loose. They start telling me everything they shouldn't be telling me. And so I'm just like saying like, now we have a personal connection. So then it stops being about, I like Jamie because of his resume too. I'm going to take care of Jamie because I like him as a person.
Yes.
Yeah.
And these can be people who are just like, I don't like black people, but I like Jamie.
Yep.
Correct.
That became my network.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm telling you, you are hitting on so many things that is so pertinent. And another thing that you said, I know that guy that you started to work for on the governor, he was a Republican black guy, right? But you didn't say, oh, you're not Democratic or you whatever, so I won't. You looked at the mission versus saying, oh, well, you're Republican or you're Democrat or the mission is this, and you're giving me the opportunity to execute, to complete the mission. Let's go. And I find out that's what a lot of us is not. We just want to be affiliated only with this right here, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean it's funny because the guy who actually appointed me, like, he was actually a Democrat, and they invited him to work in the Republican administration.
Oh,
and
wow.
So for me, I was just like, I was registered independent, still am. So people ask me all the time, like, are you a Republican or a Democrat? I'm like, I am a black pragmatist. Like every day, it can always be better than yesterday if you're a black man in America. And so how I always approach it is like the best advice I got when it comes to politics, all that stuff like that, all these divisive times, right? It's like there are no permanent friends, there are no permanent enemies, they're just permanent issues.
Correct.
And so even now, right, I got a lot of friends who really caught up in the Middle East stuff, right? I said, you know what? I'm sorry, I don't have a meme or a tweet or a perspective on it because I'm struggling to save black boys in Chicago.
Correct.
I can't save black babies in Chicago. It's like I've been working on black babies in Chicago and Milwaukee and DC and Baltimore and Dallas for 20 years, and I've been failing. So now for you to tell me I need to drop everything I've been doing and to pivot to something else thousands of miles away, I'm not saying that's not important. I'm just saying that I have my permanent issue. And I trust that there are people who are more smarter than me on the Middle East issues to handle that. And for me, I'm continuing to develop my expertise and my talents on the people here locally because I'm failing here and I want to get better here. And when I start saving the black boys and girls here, then I can devote my efforts everywhere else.
Yeah,
Man,
bro.
I'm telling you, and you have to have a outlook like yours in order to accomplish a great task, like you're saying. Because Ricky and I, it's funny that you said we tell people like our podcast, the businesses that we started, it's not because of, and I'm gonna say it out loud, the black community why it thrives.
Yeah.
Because when we tried to, just like you said, you thought that the church was gonna do an offering. Everybody was gonna say, "Oh yes, let's go." That's not why I thrived. That's not why we're thriving. It was just like you said, people that was outside of the community that was like, "Hey, let's show you this. Let me show you this." Oh, we spoke to them. Hey, this is how you operate this and this and this in order to execute to get that. And that's some of the things that we have to get better at, is that group economics and understanding that we can't, just like you said,
But the thing is,
the obstacle is jumping 10 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the thing is, you know what, Marlon, as I'm thinking about this, and it's education for black people, because we will be the first ones to dress up and go out to a big event.
Yes.
And be fly from head all the way down to the toes. We'll rent a car to look even more fly. We'll go and find one of Jamie's old guys and get a watch.
Booster woman, yeah.
But we don't know how to place that into the right area, because in those spaces you're going there for the limelight, like you're going there to be seen, right? In other space, and you're celebrated for what they see you have, right? In other spaces, you're more vulnerable. The guy that walks into one of those networking things and he's just boisterous and I know all this stuff, and he's like pushing people off like this. I'm just looking fly. Had that same posture that someone would have at one of those the party events. People ain't trying to mess with him. Like, dude, I ain't trying to mess with that dude. Like, nah, cool. The most humble person that walks in and greets everybody in there, that smiles, it shows interest in what they're doing. Probably don't even talk about what they're doing as much, right? There's really getting to learn more people. That's the person that they really want to do business. But we don't understand that because we're not taught that. We're taught the flash. We're taught we need to have this. We need to show this. And like you said, we have all this money, but we have no true power because we don't know how to place it. Go ahead, Jamie. What do you say?
No, that's real. I mean, that's one thing. That's like, I definitely want to, I know I'm conscious of your time, but the main thing I want to share was on this, right? So you talk about like, what's the most important thing that would help propel Black economic mobility? And I read this book. Man, if this is up to me, it'd be required reading. It's a book about entrepreneurship and Black American wealth by John Sibley Butler. And he says this one term I thought was phenomenal. He said, throughout the Black, and he went all the way back to slavery, right? And he identified at least maybe like 4 or 5, what he calls economic detours. And so how we define economic detour, and this is something that I said, like, this is the biggest problem with Jim Crow. So Jim Crow is bad, yeah, for all the things that happened with racism and stuff like that. The biggest problem with Jim Crow was that it's told out millions of people, you're not allowed to participate in a free market economy. That was not done to the Jewish community. That was not done to the Latino community. That was not done to the Asian community. They were saying you can't live over here, but they never said you can't engage in commerce with us. You can't engage in transaction with us. So when they told us that robbed us of like over 100 years of mentors, wealth accumulation, knowledge, understanding, experience. And so I think, again, this is one of the things, again, like I'm trying to do a correct paper on it. When I say it, though, it's like, man, that sounds controversial. But I was like, this is the best analogy I could use. What happens is, so people always talk about like, man, we need to rebuild Tulsa. We need to be able to buy black. We need to have a strong black community. And I had a lot of friends who are politicians. They're just like, Jamie, would you support like a buy black day? And I'm like, nah. And they're like, what you mean? Like, why would you support that? I said, for the same reason I wouldn't support sleeping with my sister, make our family strong. And so, like, and so I'm like, we got to understand how wealth accumulation works. It's not about me exchanging my dime for Marlon's nickel. It's about me creating a service or product in Chicago that could then export to Charlotte and then to Beijing and then across the world and import their cash here. And so what I feel like what happens when we had this economic detour was that, you know, we had this artificial economy, which was like the Tulsas and all those things like that, where we just, due to the fact we didn't have any competition, we thrived. But it's like you created an economic zoo. What happens in a zoo with animals? They live longer, they're healthier, sometimes they might be happier. Take that same lion and introduce them to the wild. They're going to be dead within a week.
Yep.
And so that's what happens when they said we weren't trained for desegregation economically. They just said, well, y'all free. And then what happened? Walmart moved in. Like the free market moved in our community and we were not prepared. We were not. And so then that's where, again, that's more my conservative side. That's why I'm like, yeah, then we had the Great Society, which I'm for, like creating a strong safety net because my family's a product of that, right? But I've always said I believe it should be a trampoline, not a hammock. And so what happens then with the Great Society is that like we then replace what should be free enterprise businesses with the non-profit industrial complex. And I didn't pick up on that until I tried to do accelerator program inside of Milwaukee with one of the group's Young Enterprise Society. So we said, hey, we want to do an accelerator program, use a Stanford level programming, and we want you to apply. And people who complete it, we give you $5,000 grants, actually $10,000 grants. Out of 36 applications, over half were social or nonprofit businesses. Because I knew and culturally, we thought, man, if I own a nonprofit that offers gymnasium equipment, offer gym space to like foster youth kids, it's a business. Have staff, have a budget, have revenue. And the same thing applies now to where I'm like, we're disproportionately leaders in a nonprofit, in the religious, the faith space, in the public sector space. We're underrepresented in the private sector space. And so I'm like, okay, now that we had the economic detour, how do we get back, how we on-ramp the entire Black American community to where not only do we on-ramp, but now we got to play catch up? Because while we were on this detour, riding down alleys and the back streets, the rest of the world kept going. Like the Chinese kept going. That's why they're ahead of us. You know, white people kept going. Jewish people kept going. Latinos definitely kept going. We had to on-ramp and catch up. And so that's been like the biggest challenge for me. And so that's why when people like, again, on one hand, I want to criticize my people and be like, yo, why are you out here, you know, flossing at this brunch when, you know, when this is not going to get us richer, not get us wealthier. But I realize in terms of Asian experience, we just teenagers. And what do teenagers with a lot of money do? They blow it.
So the information, it's a very dynamic. It's the dynamics of the, and then you could throw in first city, and then you could throw in the dynamics of my father's Jamaican. I was born in Jamaica, but I live in America. Our culturally, we think a little different.
Very different.
And then you have a whole Caribbean culture in Brooklyn, New York, and then you have and then you have the African
immigrants. Yep.
So it becomes so complex that, just like you said, what they see, they can't tell the difference between this. And if somebody thinks he's lying, when the lady was in the elevator and you had on a suit and you walked in, she clutched her purse, that should let you know they cannot see anything different.
No, they cannot.
Yeah.
Man, Jamie, this has been amazing, dude. We can go on and on, man, but definitely want to respect your time this evening, and man, we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
And one thing a couple of things I want to do is I know you say you're writing a white paper, and I'm quite sure there's other things that you've put out there. Is there anywhere for how can people that listen to this podcast connect with you or follow things that you're doing or be a part of the things that you are trying to shake and move in your world?
Yeah, definitely. Probably on LinkedIn. Like, I'm terrible at social media. Like, I'm a geriatric millennial.
It's
so
okay.
like,
Yeah. Same here.
Same here.
Like I didn't grow up. Like, I grew up like Black Planet, but even then, I wasn't cool enough to be on there with the sparkles and everything. Yeah. And so then I finally created an ID account. But then it's like be ratchet. So I'm like, man, I can't put those on. Like, I'm just at the club with bottles, and then I'm trying to talk about helping the kids the next day. So it's just like, so like I tell people all the time, like, hey, God ain't finished with me yet. Like, he's still working. It's chapter 3 of a 20-part book series. But definitely LinkedIn, jme.eldr. The best way. That's where I post a lot of my content, a lot of professional stuff I'm doing. Definitely because you can also, again, you want to check out like the companies we're working on. Definitely you check out Surface Pros. That's what it's plural.co. So surfacepros.co. That's our kitchen bath remodeling company. But definitely LinkedIn is going to be the place where I drop a lot of the things that I'm working on. I'm always trying to connect with people like this podcast and things you guys are working on. I try to drop it there just because I think for the audience we're trying to reach, both Black, white, and other, they're on there, right? And that's another thing, again, going back to what you're talking about. Like, I talk to a lot of young Black kids out of colleges, and I'm like, what's your LinkedIn? I don't use LinkedIn. I'm on TikTok. I'm like, who ain't on TikTok? Your boss. Mm-hmm. You know who ain't on TikTok? People who are going to fund you. You know who ain't on TikTok? Like, people who like pass policy. So I ain't dissing TikTok. So I'm like, I'm not saying don't be on TikTok. I'm saying diversify your communication platforms in order to, that way you can't say people aren't hearing me or ignoring me. So that's like a little small nugget I always want to leave behind as well.
I love it. Love it. And one last question I would ask you, because it's something that we ask all of our guests. I'd love to hear your perspective on it. So we ask them to go back to a time in your life, and I would say the one that stood out. You know what? I'm gonna change it up because my first knee jerk is to go when you get ready to go into the Army.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm gonna go to that person when you came back home after the Army, and you had 60 seconds with him. Knowing what you know now, what would you share with that young Jamie?
Oh man, that's deep, right? So I think I can't remember who said it. I'm not to properly credit them. They said there's two most important times in your life. Is just like when you're born and when you find your purpose.
Mm.
And then I think at that time I was on the path of my purpose, but I didn't realize it. Like, I had found my calling, and I thought, and so now people talk about like, what do you do? Like, I'm an impact investing. Like, I'm trying to do community economic development and communities of color, stuff like that. But it started back then when I left the Army and started my first company, because I didn't do it to get rich. I did it because this was a means to create jobs, create opportunities for other people like me within my community. I think the thing is, it's just like, if I go back and tell that person that, it would be to say, number one, you're doing the right thing. You might be doing it the wrong way. The same way, when I was like, my spiritual mentor said, like, yo, when he was back in the hood doing your ghetto Walmart, you had the right process. You just had the wrong product. Mm-hmm. And so it's the same thing when I was 21. It's just like, I knew what I wanted to do to fulfill my purpose. I just didn't know how to do it. And so I would try to equip myself with the principles, the values, the mental models that I have now. But more importantly, I would try to instill courage. Because one of the things is that, like, I've literally had this conversation like for the past week. So it's like a timely conversation, is that, me and my, we were talking about like the Bible, right? So I've been like really like going through my spiritual journey in the last few months. And one of the things they talk about, what's the hard part, right, is when hey, like if you come to this place and time in life where you may have to be of service to others, you might have to do something hard. Like you should pray about it and obey whatever God commands you. But he said the biggest challenge won't be overcoming the fear and doing what's expected of you. The biggest challenge you might have to first overcome is that those around you, especially those closest to you and those you're trying to serve, will question you. They're going to critique you, and they're going to try to plant doubt in your mind. Kind of going back to the conversation about the Black people, right? And like how it's like they're not our customers. It's like I think I fell victim to that for a large period of time, thinking like I had to do business to fit in with my own people, and that kind of hamstrung me. I had to be a Black business owner instead of the best business owner, and I think that held me back for the longest time. And in ways, again, our white counterparts don't. Like Mark Zuckerberg never said, "I want to have the biggest Jewish business in the country, in the world." He just simply said, "I own Facebook. I'm gonna serve Black, brown, white, Russian, Ukrainian, whoever. And by the way, I happen to be Jewish." I'll take my money and I'll reinvest it in Jewish efforts, but it's not what I lead with. I think I spent a lot of time leading by identity and not by performance, not by outcomes, not by impact. So I would definitely advise myself of that. And again, that's not something that just I got to sit at the 21-year-old Jamie. That's something I remind myself about all the time, right? Because every time a George Floyd situation happens, the entire communication changes. It's still like, Jamie, what are you doing for Black people, and how are you doing it? And I have to tell people how I serve all people is how I best serve Black people. And they're gonna call me crazy. They're gonna critique me. They're going to call me a conservative. They're going to call me a sellout. And then like the Lord said, like, hey, it's impossible to be a prophet in your own city.
Yeah. Come on.
Man, I love it, dude. Man, Jamie, this has been an awesome time. We want to thank you so much for spending some time with us on the Success Journey show. And for all of our travelers and listeners out there, we want to thank you for tuning in again for another week. Another episode. I know that you have to rewind this, right? Like, just go ahead and do it. I said rewind, right? You go back. I don't know. I'm still stuck too, like in the 80s, right?
Take a finger and slide it back. Whatever.
Yeah, slide back. Yeah, whatever.
You can tell the old people.
Right. But always remember, you can check us out at our website, thesuccessjourneyshow.com. You can also see us on all social media platforms and YouTube, where you can find our latest shows and all our information and things that are coming out. Feel free to reach out to us, email us, and give us your feedback on the show. If you have any guests that you want us to bring on, we'll love for that introduction so that they can come and join us on this show and join us in this conversation. We want to thank you guys again, and we'll see you guys next week at the same time, same place on the Success Journey show. Everyone have a good one. Peace.
All right. One love.
You've been listening to the Success Journey Show, where your dreams, drive, determination, and diligence are the foundation to success. For more information, check out thesuccessjourneyshow.com. The Journey Squad is here helping you to your destination.